Good, darling. Okay, here we go. I'm in San Francisco today, so it's still 5 p.m. and the sun is still shining, and I'm sitting in a house looking at the trees. But it's not a very hot place. It's summer, but you'd think it was winter. But it's okay though. All right, darlings. So what's the plan?
Well, we have had some questions come through. People have emailed in some questions.
That's good news.
So we can start with questions.
If you like, yeah. So we can start with our little...
But did you want to offer?
Yes, if we can offer mandala. Okay,
so then Jason's going to, on behalf of the little group and all this, everybody there, going to offer a little mandala, a representation of the universe as a request for the teachings. So we imagine all offering this together. Think of all the marvelous things of the world, pile them all up, and offer to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. Very auspicious.
From Ringchen Yidegen Padi Sangye Jingdu Mikte Uwa Yidro Unamda Jila Chepasho Jetsun Lama Dampa Kyenam Ichen Kukala Yense Chuzin Tre Jita Sampe Dulce Jima Lahazab Yechuki Shahapa Wahabtu Idam Guratna Mandala
Kamiyatayami. All right, so we can now, that'll do, that's enough, that's good. Well, I'll just say a little motivation with our own words. So we think now, we're going to listen, think about, analyze, contemplate, and if we choose to, internalize this information, because it's all advice. It's all advice, and the advice is to help us clarify our own minds, put ourselves together, understand our minds, unpack and unravel our minds so we can change the mind. Why? Because we want to be happy and not suffer. And then because we're all in the same, we start to realize when we lessen the neuroses that we connect to others and we're all in the same boat. So then we start to want to be of benefit to others as well as ourselves. That's the reason to listen. So we think like that. We're here for this reason, for our sake and the sake of others. Good, so let's start with questions. That's a good idea. Let's start with questions. What is there?
So lots of questions came through from Lynn and Tara. So these questions are all from Lynn and Tara. The first question they had was, I struggle to give loving kindness and forgiveness to my mum who lives with mental health challenges and anger. What practice should I develop?
Well, I think that's such a big one, isn't it? Everywhere you turn, in every culture on the planet, the people the ones we have this most intense karmic connection with, history with, is the person who gave birth to us. I mean, it's kind of powerful, isn't it? If we think of the intensity of that karma, it's incredible. So it's it's not an uncommon one. It's such a common one. So the first answer is, it depends on it. It's sort of like, I'm playing tennis with a difficult tennis player. What's the best shot? So it's all a question of how experienced you are. If you've never practiced tennis before, well, honey child, there's very little you can do. But if you've got a bit of tennis under your belt, then, so, I mean, I don't know what your level of practice is, but I can make some suggestions, right? So, if you're a bodhisattva, then you would be happy to be with your mother. And the more neurotic and the more miserable and the more troublesome she is, the happier you'd be, because it's all grist for your mill. So we're not at that level, 99% of us. So we really have to learn to know how good our tennis is. I mean, this is exactly how good our practice is. So, you know, first of all, then the next point is you don't say it. So ask the question exactly again. What's the exact question? Please.
Yeah, sorry, the exact question is, I struggle to give loving kindness and forgiveness to my mum, who lives with mental health challenges and anger.
Who lives with me?
No, who lives with mental health challenges.
Oh,
and
okay.
anger.
Okay, so first of all, so the next piece it's important to know, and maybe if you're there, you should tell me, because that very much determines the answer. Does she live with you? Is she 100 miles away? Do you see her once a year? Do you deal with her once a day? Are you her carer? There's a lot of different questions. To really answer properly, I need to know that. So if you're there, why don't you answer those questions for me? It'd be very, very helpful. Then we can have a really proper conversation.
Lives with us every day.
Lives with her. So she does.
Yeah.
That's in the chat box.
Yes.
Okay, good. That really helps. Okay. So depending on your level of practice, if she's living with you, it's sort of implied that you've kind of agreed to that, unless she kind of walked in with a gun and demanded she live in you. We assume that you've agreed that she could live in your house, which is incredibly kind of you. Anybody who decides they want to take care of their mum, especially if their mum's a bit neurotic, you know, that's incredibly kind. So then, because she lives with you, I'm assuming that you have to take care of her. Then because you've chosen to do that, which is incredible. Assuming you're not a bodhisattva, because if you were, you wouldn't be asking the question, you'd be rejoicing. So then one of the crucial things is two crucial things first is, control your mouth. Don't fight. So I know there's another person who wrote to me recently who's got exactly the same situation, mother and father living with her, very demanding, very mean, very angry, very unkind, always critical, never satisfied. She said she gets angry, but she doesn't ever say anything. So I think that's a tremendous practice. So depending on your personalities, that's a massive practice, because at least you don't make more harm. Now, if you fight with her every day, then my piece of advice would be try your very best to completely shut your mouth. I mean, 99% of your problems actually would stop if you could do that. It's still hard enough, but a huge practice is to try and control your mouth. Do not argue, because you just said she's got anger issues, and you say mental health. Well, I mean, Buddha says we've all got mental health issues. If you've got attachment and anger and jealousy and neurosis and depression, honey child, we've all got mental health issues. So your mum joined the club. And if she's angry, that means she's never satisfied. She's always probably criticizing. So one of the most important practices, for your sake as much as anybody else's, is do not fight, do not argue, do not say words. I can't tell you how powerful that is. So that would mean if you've got other people who are sympathetic to you, who are kind to you, who support you, then maybe you can talk to them about it and cry to them. But you do not do it to the person. This is incredibly important, unbelievably powerful practice. And I think if you do that, then you'll find a big difference if you can vow every morning to the best of your ability to shut your mouth, not argue, not fight. That's one. But the other one, because obviously it's a difficulty, is to try to find a way where you can get space. Try and really factor into your day as much as you possibly can. If you can, even 5 minutes, you've got to consciously do it, not sort of become victimized. I'm never having any time for myself, but really make a conscious decision. Find a way to have time for yourself. There are two things. So if you want to discuss more from that, I mean, besides your meditation practice, besides practicing being compassionate to your mother, depending on where you're at, I mean, this other person who wrote to me, she had no love. She has no love for her mother or father. She has none at all. She has no affection. She says that, but she tries out of duty to take care of them, but she doesn't argue. And then what she has to do is learn to work on her own mind and try and also find time for herself to really make an effort, If that means having to hire people, if you can, spend money to hire people to do the job so you can have time for yourself. These are really vital things. I mean, that's two pieces of advice. The third one, I mean, could be, then even if you're brave enough to when you're on your own, to try and think through if a person's got mental health issues, which means they, whatever the level they are, plus being angry, they're clearly the one who's suffering more. This is really hard to see when you're the brunt of their anger. But if you can really do the analysis and really be thinking through the Dharma explanations, then this person clearly is suffering more than you. And that could be the basis of having some kind of compassion, if you can. But it's crucial to protect yourself, to not argue, to not make it worse. I mean, this is 2 pieces of advice. And then have some space. And then the third one, if you do have a practice, then really try to strengthen your practice. Really make sure you have a practice at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, because this can also be another way of taking care of yourself. So that's some advice. If you want to ask more and say more and give me more information, then great. But I think it's such a common problem. But the mouth one, I can't stress enough. Any relationship we have, if we can shut our mouths, 90% of our problems could be solved, because that once you start shouting and yelling and arguing back, it just becomes a mire and very, very difficult to handle, So what do you think of that, sweethearts?
Thank you. It's hard.
Yes, but you've got to make conscious effort. And it's really important not to feel like a victim. And this is one of the commonest things. Because when we get angry and upset, that's the voice. I'm not being mean to us, but it is the voice of a victim. It's poor me. It's not fair. Why me? This shouldn't be happening to me. Why me? It's very, very strong. So in your own practice, a 4th piece of advice, really see your own mind, hear that flavor of the feeling of being hurt. Because I mean, it's horrible having people be mean to us, It's horrible having people be angry with us, especially when it's our mum. Because our own neediness to please our mum since we're born is kind of intense. And if your mum continually abuses you, then you're always being kind of slapped in the face. So it's really, another piece of advice to say is to not try our very best, because she's crazy, because she's mentally ill, because she's got so much suffering. It's like, try not to take it personally, but this demands a lot of practice and a lot of time on your own and learning to really be strong in the face of all this. But also the other one is rejoice in yourself, how incredibly kind you are, how incredibly kind you are to take care of your mum. I mean, look at the mums and dads who just chucked into the bin basically because the children can't be bothered. So it's an incredible thing that you're doing, is my feeling, based on what you've told me. So delight and rejoice in that. I think it's amazing. So that's my advice, but there could be different advice to another person, so based on what you've told me. All right, people, what else is there, Amy? Something else there?
Yeah, well,
a few questions.
Yeah, some more questions. Again, this is from Tara and Lynn. Tara and Lynn, I'm not really sure. I'll just read the question. It just says, knowing that I have not demonstrated compassion in these moments, what can I do to reduce my agitation and karmic imprint and forgive myself for not being able to not react?
So that assumes you have been fighting with your mum. You have been answering back, doesn't it? With that,
yeah.
I wish you could talk to me. They don't want to talk to me. I'm not trying to make you show your face or anything.
They're here, Venerable Robina. This is Lynn here. Lynn, do you want to
Where?
Yeah.
Where's Lynn here? What do you mean
Hello.
here? Oh, there you are. This must really talk to me. Come on. Please talk to me. It's so much better. Just
so
talk
in those moments, it's being really conscious of the fact of exactly as you spoke to. It's that you do react, then you realize that you have done it, you're regretful of it, and then what practice you can then apply.
Exactly. So first of all, what I said so far, was that useful?
Yes, very much so.
But you see, the key point, I want to say it again, you've got to be conscious, not hear it and then go, okay. You've got to be consciously making these various decisions. You've got to, in the morning, I'm going to answer your question in a minute directly, but this is again what I want to say. It's really important because we're stuck in habits. We know that we're stuck in a groove. So to change those habits they won't just change overnight. You've got to make a conscious decision to change. So first of all, do you have a daily practice? We've got kind of a Buddhist practice or something?
Yes.
You have. Do you ever do the purification practice? You know that practice?
I've been doing medicine Buddha with and thinking about my mum.
Okay, good. So then, okay. So then So first of all, again, like the things I said before, be conscious, really be consciously decide these things. And if you do it consciously every day, make a decision in the morning, I'm going to watch my speech like a hawk. Really say it to yourself. When you make a firm, we all know when you make a firm decision is when you do something. So make that firm decision. Of course, you'll fail, but if you don't make the firm decision, you'll just sink into the misery and think you can't change. You understand? So make that firm decision. So, okay. There's a practice, I mean, you might be familiar with it. We call it purification. And as Lama Zopa said, we're insane not to do it every day. And there are 4 little steps to it. Have you heard of this purification practice or not?
No.
No, you don't know that one. It's really, really helpful, I tell you. And we can put it in very down-to-earth psychological terms, and it's very logical. So at the end of the day, because we all do things that we regret, we all get guilty about things, we all get stressed and feel bad about it, and often we feel more bad than we should, but that's okay. But we, so then there's this practice, it's got the 4 R's. The first one is called regret, and this is not guilt. So what basically you'd sit down with, you can do, use your medicine Buddha as your practice, let's say, have your medicine Buddha. But the first step you do is, you're talking to, are you Lynn or Tara?
Lynn.
You're Lynn, okay, darling. So first you'd sit down wherever you sit to do your practice, and your first step is, you're talking to yourself. Okay, you imagine the medicine Buddha there. Just imagine him there. And you're talking to yourself. And the first one is, well, I regret. So let's say you badmouthed your mum that day, or you kicked her in the teeth, or whatever you did to your poor mum, whatever you understand. You acknowledge it. And when we all get caught up with the guilt, but try not to make it guilt. I remember His Holiness the Dalai Lama was asked one time, what's the difference between guilt and this step called regret? And there's a big difference. So he said, guilt is you look into the past, and it could be, an hour ago, well, I did this and I did that and I did this. And then we conclude automatically, and I'm a bad person. That's what guilt is, right? And we all have it automatically. We put ourselves down. But regret, he said, the first part's the same. Well, I did do it. I did shout at my mum. I did lose patience, right? But then you have to consciously change the next thought, and you say, well, okay, what can I do about it? Not, oh, I'm a bad person. Because actually that's exaggerating. You're not a bad person. The Catholics have a lovely way to put it. They say, don't criticize the sinner, criticize the sin. So don't badmouth, don't I am bad. Okay, badmouthing a person might be, but it doesn't define the whole of you. So you say, well, I did do it. You own it. Because, you're stressed, you've got your attachment, like everybody else's, wants everything to be lovely, and your mum upsets the apple cart, then you lose your patience, and now you feel guilty. So don't be guilty. It's like, I did do it. You're talking to yourself, I did do that. And, and then you say to yourself, well, you know what, Lynn, I regret this from the depths of my heart. And you've got to say these words, because you know what, Lynn, I'm sick of this suffering. And you are, aren't you? You're fed up with your own uncontrol. You're fed up with your own misery. You're fed up with your own suffering. You agree, don't you? So this regret is like a kindness to yourself. We've really got to cultivate it. We all just have guilt instead, and it's so bad. I regret having done that because, and you say the word because, and you're talking to yourself. You're not talking to the Buddha. You're talking to you, because I am sick of this habit. I'm sick of this suffering. I'm sick of this roundabout. This, this kind of. You understand what I'm saying? And it's kind of like a kindness to yourself. And then, of course, you can regret everything else you've done, like cheat on your partner and murder your husband, whatever you did. You understand? I'm just joking. But if it's that particular one that really gets you down, you regret that, because I'm sick of this. In other words, this first step, regret, has got nothing to do with your mum yet. It's compassion for yourself. It's a really important one. It's like a soft attitude toward you're sick of the suffering that you're causing yourself because your uncontrolled mouth, because your own anger. Do you understand my point? So you're really taking responsibility, not exaggerating your badness. That's guilt, not that. Then you can think. So usually when you do this practice, you regret other things you've done. Then you think of whatever I've done in my past lives, I regret because I'm sick of suffering. I'm sick of suffering. Then you think, well, whom can I turn to? And the next one is called reliance. So here you could kind of visualize the medicine Buddha above your head, if you like. Just think of the medicine Buddha there. That's fine. We do it with another Buddha, but it's all the same. It doesn't matter. And then you think, well, what a relief. I've got this. You could say, like, it's like the relationship between a doctor. Like, you've eaten too much poison. I regret having eaten that sugar, let's say. I regret having eaten that sugar. You know why, Lynn? Because I don't want diabetes. The next step is reliance. Whom can I turn to? Where's my doctor? So in this context, Buddha's like our doctor, where Buddha doesn't heal you. Buddha doesn't do the Well, you think in this practice, Buddha doesn't make you better. It's you making yourself better, you purifying yourself, but you're relying upon the Buddha. So you kind of visualize medicine Buddha above your head, if you like, and you'll be happy you got a Buddha, the Buddha whose methods you're using to help you to help others, and so on. Do you understand my point? That's the reliance part. But the second part also is including compassion for who you've hurt. So if you figure you've hurt your mum, let's say you've hurt your mum or anybody else, you now regret for their sake, and you have compassion for the people you've harmed. The first one, regret's like compassion for yourself. This is now compassion for those you've harmed. You get my point? So they're very distinctly different. So it's refuge, like relying on the Buddha, being happy you found Buddha as who's got the method that you're using, and then you have compassion for those you've harmed. And here you would have compassion for your mum, because you can see that she's suffering, right? Can't you? That's clear, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So then the third step is you now can do a few of, if you do the medicine Buddha mantra, do you? What do? You do, well, great. So why not use the medicine Buddha? Because that's a practice you know. So now you visualize nectar coming into you from the medicine Buddha, like light and nectar, as you say his mantra, and you imagine purifying all of your own rubbish, all of your own misery, all your anger, all your hurt. You get my point? You visualize that. Filling you with nectar, completely purifying you, or light, whichever you prefer, is above your head. And then fourth is is like resolve. The first is regret, reliance, the remedy, and then the fourth one is resolve, which is like a determination. You talk to yourself to not do it again. So maybe you can't guarantee maybe you can never say, I will never badmouth my mum again, but you can say maybe for 24 hours, maybe between now and tomorrow, I promise to myself I'll do my best to watch my mouth and not. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this gives you courage, and then you, as Lama Yeshe puts it, now you can go to bed with a happy mind. Do you understand?
Thank you. That's very wise.
It's just psychologically practical, you know. And as Lama Yeshe says, what purification is the power of the regret, the power of the reliance, the power of the remedy, the power of resolve. So it's really a psychological process that you go through to purify your own mind, and you rely upon the Buddha. So I find, and as Lama Zopa says, we're crazy, we're insane not to do it every day, and to do it before you go to bed. It's very kind of helpful for yourself, relaxes your mind, you know. Do you understand? It can be quite short, doesn't have to be long, quite short. Do you understand?
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you, Lynn. Who else was there? Amy, anybody?
Well, more questions from Lynn.
Oh, well, Lynn, come on, out with it.
So Lynn says, my sister has been listening to your teachings on YouTube. Not being a Buddhist and being curious, what would you suggest she do to start a Buddhist practice?
Is that what she wants, Lynn? Is she asking you?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
she's right here.
Where are you? Tara, that's you.
Yep.
Honey, child, what you're doing at this second is exactly the answer. Because of Zoom these days, it's such a miracle. I find Zoom incredible. It came out as sort of second best during the pandemic, but I find it so beneficial. You can just sit there in your privacy of your own home. You don't have to talk. You just listen and you hear these conversations. This is the way you really get a taste of the teachings. And then basically, you know, if you want to keep doing this kind of thing, because you learn about it, you hear about it, and then I think it's really helpful to have a bit of a disciplined daily practice. Even just 5 minutes in the morning when you get out of bed, you notice, you remind yourself, before your mind starts going on all this chatting, you decide, you know, how fantastic, I'm still alive, I'm going to make the most of today. You hop out of bed, and maybe before you have your breakfast, you know, you might just sit down on your comfortable cushion or a comfortable seat, wherever you sit, and do like 5 minutes. Have you ever done any of the mindfulness meditations? Do you know any of them?
No, not really.
Oh, Lynn can teach you, can't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
5 minutes, honey child. Don't sit there for 1 hour. It's so ridiculous. Just decide for 5 minutes you're going to sit there with a little, you think, okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to try to be mindful for 5 minutes, like watch my breath, and just for 5 minutes, and then just so I can begin to begin to get in touch with my own mind, because that's the real job long term, to become super familiar with the workings of our own crazy minds. And so sitting there for 5 minutes with a conscious decision not to just not to sink mindlessly into our thoughts, which is how we spend most of our day, but to really watch the breath. So you just stay watching the breath. Your mind will wander off. You bring it back to the breath. You don't make your thoughts go away. You can't do that, but you can't help it out of the corner of your eye. You can't help but notice your thoughts. And that's what you're going to bring to bear in the daily life. When you open your eyes, you go down to the kitchen, wherever you go, maybe, I don't know, you've got a hubby or a wife or a kid or something.
No, dogs.
Dogs, okay. Dogs make you unhappy? They get in your way and make you annoyed?
One of them.
Not like husbands or wives. Never mind. So, but what I'm getting at is you do 5 minutes, you start the day with a bit of a motivation. Okay, hop out of bed. I'm going to make the most of today. You sit down for 5 minutes, just 5, and you do a little exercise, and you think, well, throughout the day, I'm going to do my best to, notice, control my body and speech. It sounds weird almost to say to control your speech, because we never think about that in our culture, but that's an amazing practice, because 90% of our problems stop if we shut our mouth. Do you understand what I'm saying, Tara? So just make a decision to be careful, watch your speech, you're going to be with, be careful, and then watch your mind throughout the day. And then the end of the day, you do a 5-minute little practice like what I just said to Lynn. That's a really good start to a day, darling. And listen to the teachings, come to things like this and read a few things and let it unfold. You follow your own heart, see where you go with it, and then it'll just unfold for you in a very organic way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Good, sweetheart. Okay. Any more from Lynn and Tara, or is that it?
No, there's more. It's great that you've asked all these questions. So a follow-on question is about how important is meditation in our daily practice, and what recommendations do you have for a person's daily practice? So,
well, there are thousands of meditations, Lynn, thousands of kinds of meditations. But I think that just develops as we as we listen to more teachings, as we get more involved, as we maybe do a study course, as we attend certain things, those start to grow. But the most basic one, like I'm talking here, this is the basis of really what mindfulness is, which comes from the Buddha, of course, is this practical technique. We might end the session with a little session so you can see it, Tara, as well. But this is a good start, because you see, in the most simple way of putting it, the essence of Buddhist practice, the real essence, the heart essence of Buddhist practice is to know what's going on in our mind moment by moment, ever more deeply, ever more deeply, ever more deeply. Now, you have to ask, why would I want to do that? Because guess what? As far as the Buddhist approach is concerned, our happiness and our suffering are mainly caused by what's in our mind. This is a big surprise for us, because we think it's the outside world. Buddha doesn't argue it's the outside world doesn't play a role, but he's quite different in asserting that what goes on in our mind, moment by moment, is the source. So therefore, becoming super familiar with our minds and learning to slowly and ever more at an ever more sophisticated level, it takes time, and unpacking and unraveling our minds and knowing that it all comes down to, all the emotions come down to being underpinned by thoughts. As we get in touch with all of this, we learn to be able to change our mind, change our conceptual stories, change the scripts in our head. And this is really the essence of what Buddhist practice is. It's a simple way of putting it. So learning to do these start with a simple practice of watching your breath, because breath just happens naturally. And then as you're doing that, you learn to stay focused on the breath, which means you're stepping out of your head for 5 minutes, which means your thoughts won't go away, but you can't help but hear them. And that's good. Don't think it's not. And then in your daily life, you start to bring to bear that ability to step out of yourself and not just wait for the words to vomit out your mouth to discover you're angry. You're going to notice the angry thoughts before they vomit out the mouth. That's the real skill. And that's the job. You learn to become very familiar with your mind, and that becomes very natural. In the beginning, it's hard work, because we pay attention to the outside world. But this is the job. And then all the practices you do as a Buddhist, as you develop your practice, and as you listen to more and more teachings, you develop more and more sophisticated levels of practice. So that's the answer to that, Lynn and Tara, okay? So go one step at a time. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to have questions here?
Well, there's just one final question from Lynn, and then there's one from Diana. So this one from Lynn was just, can Buddhism be learnt from books, or should you have a teacher, and how to find the right teacher for you?
I think, Lynn, you're doing exactly the answer to that. You come to things like this and you learn to find who you like. That's as simple as that, hon. You go to different yoga classes until you find the teacher you like. You go to different tennis clubs until you find the teacher you like. It's up to you. Keep yourself grounded. Check people out. Listen. Check people who you've heard about. Don't just jump into. Don't just like any old person, because there's some dumb people around. Whether it's tennis or spiritual practice, really check carefully on their qualities. Check carefully on their reputation. Check carefully on their teachings and their students, and then you just follow your heart, honey. It's very organic. Do you understand? And I think we do need, I remember Lama Yeshe said one time, he says, listen, the Buddha is dead. So the only time the Four Noble Truths will become real for us is when we hear it from a person in front of us. And that's what a teacher is. It's sort of, do you understand? Because it's a real living example in front of you. Then, you know, if you're going to play tennis, can you imagine playing tennis from a book? You've got to go find your own Roger Federer because you see a living person in front of you showing you. It really, the human dynamic really makes all the difference, doesn't it? Makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, darling. Thank you. Now, what does Diana have to ask?
So Diana was saying, so Diana is a performer and she's always been inspired by Tina Turner. And Tina Turner practiced a mantra from the Ringchen practice, from the Lotus Sutra.
Yeah, that's right. The Japanese practice is a mantra they recite. Yes, a particular prayer and mantra they recite. Yes.
And so Diana's question was, she looked that Lotus Sutra up, but couldn't find it on the fpmt website. But she was wondering about lineages. And she said that because of her Gelugpa lineage, she feels guilty looking elsewhere.
I understand.
What are your comments, please, on that?
Well, you know, Buddha's teachings, if they're Buddha's teachings, then they're valid, aren't they? So you better check them out. But I mean, you know, that tradition I've heard, I don't know much about it, but I have heard about it, that this tradition is focused on one particular sutra and one particular practice. So, you know, that's what people do. So it's like, it's up to you to look into it and find out about it. And, you know, no reason to feel guilty. I mean, if it's Buddha's teachings, just look into these things. Just look into it, sweetheart. Look into it. Just look into it and see what it is. Find out for yourself and then ask questions about it once you've discovered a few things. I'd say that's fine. I mean, if it's Buddha's teachings, as long as wherever you get them from, fantastic. And I mean, clearly we all need we need a kind of structured path that would help us. So if you can incorporate other traditions into your practice, that's marvelous. So go for it, sweetheart. Check it out. That's what I'd suggest to do. Who else then has a question? Anybody? Or is there in particular you think I should talk about, Jason or Amy or Rosie today, or anybody else for that matter?
Well, there's no more questions at the moment.
Suggestions, Amy? What should I talk about?
Venerable Robina, I just remembered one thing that might come into the conversation.
Yes, Diana, good.
Thanks. Lama Zopa said to me, Venerable Lama Zopa said to me once when I was looking after my mum, and I'm just thinking of the conversation just past, to think of her as the guru.
Okay, well, that's an advanced teaching, Diana. How you know, that's amazing teaching. Did it make sense to you?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because, you know, what Rinpoche means by that is, of course, he means that anybody, I mean, this is an advanced level, that anybody who's troublesome to us in our life, if we are brave enough, we can think of them as our teacher. So of course you ask the question, what is she teaching you? Well, guess what? In Lynn's case, she's teaching Lynn about anger. She's teaching Lynn about her mind. She's teaching Lynn about her impatience. So of course, if we can do that, how courageous, how amazing. Do you understand, Lynn? That makes sense to you? Where's Lynn gone? She's fainted from all the work. No, there she is. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. I mean, if we're really brave enough, Diana, I tell you, we'd be advanced so quickly on our path. If time someone's mean to us, we can learn from it and be grateful for that teaching. Wow. Pretty advanced. So how amazing piece of advice from Lama Zopa. That's incredible.
Thank you. I just thought might help.
Yeah, good, darling. I love Tina Turner too. She's amazing, a female. She's an amazing being, isn't she?
Yeah, I think she's a bit of a bodhisattva. I'm very inspired. I've always been inspired by the art, that the art can be a spiritual thing. And I do think she was teaching the beyond. I do think she was teaching in her singing.
I understand that. I understand. And some people just because she had so much courage and she had so much dynamism, and she just seemed like a really good human being, apart from anything else, didn't she? That's the point.
Yeah.
I agree with you. You can help people in so many ways. That's the Bodhisattva path, Diana. You can help people in a multitude of ways. Absolutely, darling. So you go for it. Good. All right, sweetheart. So what else, people? Come on. Give me something to talk about.
Venerable Robina.
Yes.
You've been talking about having a quiet 5-minute meditation at the beginning of the day, and that you said that we might end today with a little meditation. Yes. Could you speak a little bit about, the major difficulties I think and I come across this, is, you know, when you go into meditation and your mind is so busy and you think that you're not successful because all these thoughts are coming across. And and I've heard it spoken about before, but I thought it might be useful in just knowing that if you sit down, and it's not about actually emptying your mind, I've heard that say, but about controlling your mind, even if it's only for 5 minutes. I think it would be helpful if you spoke.
So you want me to talk more about that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. I agree. I think it's a good point. Yeah, I think in general there are often some, I mean, okay, meditation does not belong to the Buddha. He doesn't have copyright on it. So everybody can use that word, and you can make up your own, and there's nothing wrong with that. So here we're describing Buddhist approach to meditation, and more specifically, we're describing in general to Buddhist, but of course the lineage we are is Tibetan Buddhist, and that's Gelugpa. But in general, the Buddhist approach to meditation is fundamentally the same everywhere you go in the Buddhist teachings. So there's two modes of meditation, two main ways of using our mind in meditation. So the first one, which is what people tend to think of as meditation, is basically called, I mean, a simple way to call it is it's a technique to develop concentration. It's called concentration meditation. The goal of it, the end result of it, is this incredibly sophisticated, subtle level of concentration that we don't even posit as existing in modern psychology. I mean, it's so advanced, it's so amazing. And this is invented by these Indians more than 3,000 years ago, well before the Buddha. This is the system Buddha was educated in, you know. So this is known as, you know, in one label for it is called calm abiding. Or you might see the Sanskrit word shamatha. So, and if you've accomplished that, I mean, that's incredibly advanced. It's really quite subtle and quite sophisticated. And you would say a person who's accomplished that has literally gone beyond the conceptual and the sensory level of their consciousness. So as I said before, we don't even posit such a state as existing. So it sounds pretty mystical to us. So it's long term. That's the long term. But the technique itself, anybody can practice it. Okay, you don't get that result. You've got to go give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll and mortgages and dogs and everything and go to the mountains for several years. Then you might get it. But never mind, we can still practice. So then what is it? So basically, we can all see that our minds are berserk. And for us in our culture, in our psychology, basically, we just assume that's a normal state of mind when you've got uncontrolled thoughts. I know even in modern psychology, they say we go to like 1,000 thoughts a second. And Buddha would definitely agree with that. So because we don't have such sophisticated methods in modern psychology or neuroscience for controlling the mind, like these genius Indians invented and which Buddha has, you know, now people are learning about these, but we don't have them in our culture. Then, of course, it's just we assume that a very busy mind, an uncontrolled mind with thousands of thoughts is what's called normal. And it is normal insofar as we're like that. But the Buddhist approach is we can learn to harness the mind. We can learn to control the mind. And indeed, we can learn to go to these much more sophisticated levels of subtle focus and concentration. But you've got to ask the question, why would we want to do that? Well, we know ourselves because we're sick of our crazy minds. We're fed up. I mean, you know, I've never heard a person say, Robina, I can't stop thinking good thoughts. If you were just never-endingly thinking good thoughts, kind thoughts, loving thoughts, happy thoughts, you don't need to control yourself, baby. You're doing fine. But we all know it's the miserable thoughts, and I'm so bad thoughts, and I'm hopeless, and I'm no good, and I can't do anything. I'm too fat, and I'm too thin, and my nose is crooked. You name it. We all have this. We're obsessed with I. Me and I, we all can see as the central player in our head, and that's the central player in all these thoughts, and they're never happy thoughts. They're miserable and jealous and anxious and attached and upset and angry, and join the universe, folks. They're the ones that distress us. They're the ones that can't stop. So how wonderful to know there is a way to control the thoughts. But honey, children, please don't hold your breath, because it's going to take a while. So just like, you know, if you sort of, you know, if you're kind of like 400 kilos overweight, it's going to take a while. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but it's going to take you a while. So you've got to have your goal in front of you, and then you go one step at a time. And that's the biggest thing we miss out on, because we tend to be impatient with ourselves. So there is a way to control the mind, and that really is what Buddha's on about. We can. But then again, you've got to ask yourself, what do you do with it then? So when you learn to when you learn to focus your mind, then it's clear, even if you do anything, if you want to make a cake, If you want to play tennis, you've got to be able to concentrate. If you can't concentrate, if you get so distracted, you won't even know how to make a cake because you forget what you just did. Did I do the eggs or did I do the milk? And you forget. You go crazy. We know that. So concentration is a really necessary ability to have to do anything. It's obvious. So here, what's the job we want to do with a focused mind? Well, the job to do from the Buddhist perspective with a focused mind is to work on your mind, is to be able to see and hear your thoughts more clearly. This is a simple way to put it for daily life people, like all of us. So even if you begin with 5 minutes in the morning, I always say that 5 minutes, start with 5 minutes. So what you basically do, you need something to focus on. They even say you could focus on something on the outside. You could focus on a shoe. But don't worry about that. Maybe you close your eyes. You can be a bit more kind of internal. So you take the breath. The simple one example is the sensation at the nostrils, the air going in and out. So first you'd locate that sensation. It's a bit different as it goes in and a bit different as it goes out. Different people talk about other objects. You can have all kinds of diaphragm, the breath, whatever. But the simple one is the breath at the nostrils. So you decide, you sit down, you be comfy. Of course, there's a typical way for the body to be that all the great meditators over the centuries have found to be most conducive for the mind to have a good meditation. And we'll discuss that when we do the session, the 5 minutes at the end. So you then settle down and then you'd make a determination. I'm going to watch my breath for 5 minutes. And you're talking to yourself here. So what you do is you then basically, you close your eyes, you locate the sensation. And then what you start to do is you literally pay attention. You're going to pay attention to that sensation. That is the job to be done. Now, what happens, of course, is within half a second, your mind's wandering off and you forget all about the breath and you're having the discussion with yourself, which is like what we're doing 24 hours a day. So what you're going to do is you've got various parts of the mind that all do their job. Attention is the one that you pay attention. But also there's another part, they call it mindfulness. And there's many weird interpretations of what this means, mindfulness, you know. It's simply another part of your mind. And think of it as like the parent, like the mother watching. So think of it this way, attention's watching the breath, and then mindfulness is like mum watching, and attention's like the kid. Every time attention wanders off, mindfulness brings it back to the breath. You just simply bring yourself back to the breath. So if you do that 50 times a minute, that is a good meditation, because basically these types of meditation are training. Just like you want to ride a bike, your intention is to get on the bike. Well, you're a little girl, you climb on the left side of the bike, and what's going to happen? You're going to fall off on the right side of the bike, and you'll pick up the bike and you'll get back on the bike, and you'll fall off the other side. You pick yourself up, and before you know it, maybe for 1 second, you can stay on the bike. It's like that. So the thing is, you're not trying to make all the thoughts go away. Eventually, when you're very sophisticated at this, you will have calmed down the thoughts, but you can't force that. It's one baby step at a time. So you're going to pay attention to the breath. So if you can even do that for 2 or 3 seconds, what you're going to notice, and if you bring yourself back to the breath all the time during that 5 minutes, you're going to notice, well, of course, out of the corner of your eye, the thoughts are continuously there. They're not going to stop. They can't, because the energy behind these thoughts is constant. It says we're born, they've been unceasing. So you can't expect them to all go away. And if they all do go away, it's because you've gone to sleep. And that's not the goal. So you're trying to stay conscious and awake. So you stay focused on the breath. You wander off, you come back to the breath. You wander off, you come back to the breath. And the key is to bring yourself back to the breath. And then you're going to hear all the crazy thoughts. So what's interesting in the texts, Pabonka Rinpoche, when he describes these 9 stages of cultivating concentration, he says a sign of success at the first of the 9 stages is that you think your mind's getting worse. No, but he says it's not. It's because you're noticing your thoughts. And this, we think, oh my God, look at my crazy mind. And you're right. But we should be happy to see the thoughts. Why? Because they're the things you're trying to sort out. If you can't identify a problem, how can you ever solve it? So what we're trying to do is observe our minds. And this is where we have to learn now. An added piece here is when we learn to understand Buddhist psychology, we understand very clearly that Buddha divides all the contents of these crazy thoughts into 3 categories. Those that are, first one, the neurotic, unhappy, deluded, exaggerated, I-based, anger, depression, jealousy, low self-esteem, you name it, that lot. And they're the ones that cause us misery. And they're the ones that cause us to make a mess in our lives. Then you've got the nice ones, but we can't hear them. I think of all these roommates in my head, and these good roommates like kindness and forgiveness and wisdom and clarity and generosity and patience, they're hiding under the bed or in the wardrobe. So you've got to they're there too, but the negative ones seem to dominate, don't they, our heads. Then the third lot, I call the mechanical parts of the mind, like concentration, good memory, discrimination, all these kind of, so forget those. The ones we're trying to become familiar with are the negative ones and the positive ones, the unhappy ones and the reasonable ones. This is a simple way of putting it. It almost seems too simple, but it's profound. So there you are, deciding to pay attention to your breath. And you do, but it feels very distant because you're so used to all the thoughts crowding out your head. But you keep persevering. You just watch the out breath. You watch the in breath. You watch the out breath. You watch the in breath. And, and you're hearing all the crazy thoughts, but you don't. What happens is we get distressed. Oh, they shouldn't be there. Oh my God, my mind's getting worse. Oh my God, I wish my thoughts would go away. Shut up. Leave them alone. Let them be there. This is a powerful practice, I tell you. It's a powerful practice. It's to stay on the breath. It's sort of like you hear a really loud noise outside. And what happens normally is in your daily life, you rush to that noise. Oh, that noise is terrible. That big noise. How dare that big noise? Blah, blah, blah. You mind your own business. Let the noise be there and stay focused on what you're doing. The same with your mind. Let the thoughts be there. They're uncontrolled, not controlled, out of control. They're there. Let them be there. You just stay watching your breath. This is a very, very simple technique, but profoundly hard to get used to because we bring all this clutter into it. Oh, I shouldn't be this way. Oh, my mind's getting worse. Oh, I'm a bad person. Just be quiet and just practice and be humble, So what you get from this, what you gradually get from this, you're practicing, in a sense, stepping out of your head. What happens is 99% of the time in the daytime, from the second we wake up in the morning, until the second we go to sleep, we all know 99% of what we're paying attention to, 100%, is the outside world. And we have to. Otherwise, if you're not paying attention to the traffic, you die. If you're not paying attention to dishes, you'll smash them. So you've got to pay attention to the outside world. But we don't pay any attention to what's in here until it vomits out your mouth, until you want to kill your mum, and it's a bit late. So this practice brings us to our mind. And it's scary in the beginning because you think you're much worse than you thought you were, but you're not. They've always been there. You just haven't noticed. So do not think the job at the beginning is to make your thoughts go away. Do not think you're getting worse or you're bad because of all your thoughts. This is normal behavior, but you at least be happy that you're now noticing them. So you bring to bear the skill into your daily life, and you go out into the kitchen after 5 minutes on your cushion, and your hubby's there slurping his coffee, the dog's there making you crazy, your mum's there shouting at you. You now will not just pay attention to that external thing and want to kill your hubby, but you're going to be noticing your annoyance before it gets strong anger. You'll notice the anxiety thoughts. This takes time, but this is the skill we're trying to cultivate. So then you think, well, what am I going to do with the anxious thoughts, the negative thoughts, the depressed thoughts? Well, slowly, people, okay? As we more and more get to become familiar with our mind, we then, as Lama Yeshe puts us, become our own therapist. See, this is a very down-to-earth way of presenting Buddhist practice, by the way. Very down-to-earth way, not all in the holy terms like meditation, blah, blah, blah. Meditation, the verb to meditate in Tibetan, is to actually the verb to familiarize. So to become familiar with your mind is the real purpose here. Why? Because you want to sort it out, because you can have control over your mind. So slowly, through daily life, as you become more familiar with your mind, and you're at the kitchen sink and hubby's slurping his coffee or whatever, instead of before, you just shout out because you're uncontrolled, but now you notice the annoyance coming. You notice the irritation. I wish he'd shut up. He knows I can't stand it. And you hear, and then you bring out your good roommates and you argue with the unhappy roommates. Give it a break, Robina. It's okay. He's allowed to slurp his coffee. He's a human being. Give the man a break. It takes time. I remember reading somewhere that one of the things that make people want to murder people is personal sounds like slurping coffee or burping or slopping. I mean, it's very intense, people say. It's very incredible. People want to kill each other. So you become familiar with the workings of your own mind. It's so practical. Stop hearing it as religion or spiritual, you know. It's incredibly practical. And you just get better and better and better at it. So the aim of this concentration meditation isn't, I've got to make all thoughts go away, isn't to have some kind of vision, isn't to feel good. I'm sorry, disappoint you. It is not to feel good. It's to learn to focus your mind so that in your daily life, and indeed as you get more advanced in your meditation techniques and you do the second mode, which is when you do the visualizations, your type of analysis and more sophisticated meditations, you're more able to do it. But this is just applying it in daily life, you know, because most of us are not going to go to the mountains and meditate all day. We do 5 minutes in the morning if we're lucky and 5 minutes at night. So the aim isn't to make all the thoughts go away. The aim isn't to have a nice feeling. The aim isn't to have a vision. The aim isn't some kind of magical thing, you know. It's a practical training to train yourself to stay focused on what you choose to stay focused on, in this case, something as simple as the breath, so that you can hear the thoughts in the background, but you don't launch into them. You allow them to be there. And this is something you really do develop the skill to do in daily life. One of the practices is when you notice your annoyance with your hubby, one approach is to argue with yourself. Another approach is just, shut up, Robina, just be quiet, leave it, give it a break. Another one is to not, but if you've got unhappy thoughts about yourself, I'm bad, I'm hopeless, I'm no good, stop believing in them. One of our worst crimes against ourselves is we believe every damn negative thought we have, you know. So there's different approaches, but the starting point is to begin to get this ability to focus a little bit so that you can start to be aware of your mind. This is my way of putting it. So does that, what you want to hear, Rosie, was that helpful?
Really clear. I think it's about it, the focus the mind is really important, because I think a lot of meditation is designed to make you feel better, like the relaxation meditation in yoga and things like that. And it's really good to have what you very clearly said about the little practice. It's not going to happen, but slowly, you do learn to focus your mind, and you've got all those crazy thoughts. And I think particularly when you argue against those thoughts about yourself,
exactly.
I think it's a lot.
See, the thing is, in this 5-minute meditation, you wouldn't do the arguing. You just let them be there. It's in daily life you do it's out. But the point that you made about other meditation techniques is really helpful, like relaxation. This is the word meditation in Tibetan is very precise, and meditation in Buddhism is a very precise thing, and it is not relaxation. That's called relaxation, and that's different. That's a really good point. Thank you. I mean, relaxation, we all need it. We're all crazy. We need to relax, and they're wonderful techniques. But this technique has got zero, you've got to hear this, zero to do with relaxing, because it's like as if, you know, like think about this analogy. If you're driving on the freeway, you do not say the most important thing is to relax. You could say that once you know how to drive a car, you can learn to relax. But oh my God, you've got to be absolutely alert 100% of the time, super sharp and alert. And that's a good analogy here. The aim is to be alert and to be learning to be in control of our mind. And in the beginning, it's intensely difficult. So it's not a relaxation technique. Have that as another session and lie down and relax. We all need it. This is absolutely the opposite to relaxation. And as you advance in this, you can learn to relax like driving the car, but you still be super, super alert. If you lose alertness on the freeway, you are dead. So you here, you know, it's like an intensity. The alertness has to be really sharp, you know. They say this whole technique, the two main dangers, this is described in the text, the two main dangers, the two things that prevent us from having a focused mind. One danger is the mind to be completely out of control, berserk, chat. The other one is relaxing and spacing out and then even going to sleep. And they're the two, over the series of techniques that go for years if you're practicing this, the 9 stages. Each stage of these 9 stages is described in terms of your ability to withstand the spacing out and the overexcited. These are the two extremes our mind continually goes between. And as you get more sophisticated at this technique, you're withstanding the tendency to space out, and you're withstanding the tendency for the mind to be berserk. And you're bringing your mind to this place in the between where you get the focus. It's a really intense technique, but start simple. And the aim is to focus your mind. So that's even itself a really powerful practice in learning to control your mind, because you're deciding, I'm going to watch the breath. You're deciding, I won't follow the thoughts. You can't force them to go away, but you decide not to follow them. There's a big, big difference. So allow the thoughts to be there. Allow the thoughts to be there. This is a powerful point. So does anybody have any questions from that?
Dave has a question.
Good, Dave. Talk to me.
Hi, Venerable. Good to see you again.
Good, darling. Yes.
Just listening to what you say. I'm a great one for not sitting on my cushion, and
Okay.
I do my water bowls day and night.
Good.
I have this maybe like a debate class, like at university. I go around, I don't want to say all day, but a lot of the day, and I am having this ongoing argument with my ego. I won't go into too much details. Recently, 8 weeks into a job, and then I got called in, and my boss said, "We're wrapping your job up." So, and that was it. So I sort of just go, well, I go back to why has this happened? Because I've done something in the past. It's karma. Don't get angry, etc., etc. So the fact that I know I just felt a bit of regret listening to you, that I don't sit on my cushion, but I do go around and have this ongoing debate with my ego.
I understand. Dave, you're doing, no, Dave, it's really okay. Dave, it doesn't matter. There's so many types of practice. Obviously, you've got to practice because you do your water bowls. Do you have kind of a close relationship with any teacher? Do you have a feeling you're close to some of your teachers or not?
Yes, you're my I don't contact you much, but you agreed to be my guru. I did the Bodhisattva vows with you. All
right.
No, that's my fault. I don't contact you. I don't.
No, you don't need. So listen, darling, Dave. What I'm saying here is this is a start. Yeah. The person who's got nothing else, but you've got your water bowls, you've got your devotion, you've got your practice, you're being your own therapist throughout the day. Honey child, you've got to practice. It doesn't mean everybody has to sit on a cushion. Don't think that. So that's what, right back to the first question, how important is meditation? We can get a bit fanatic about, I've got to be sitting on my cushion. No. If you've got commitments to do certain practices on you, then you don't do them. That's another discussion. No, but it doesn't follow. Yeah. It doesn't follow, Dave. We've got different kinds. So you've got to practice already. You've got your devotion. You've got your practice. You've probably taken refuge. You're doing your water bowls. Honey child, you've got a rich practice and you're applying your ability to watch your mind throughout the day and change it. That is a practice. So don't worry about your cushion. It's not important. I mean, eventually you've got to get concentration one day or other so that when the time right in a certain lifetime, this maybe not this one, doesn't matter. You've got to practice. And if you're doing all those things and ticking the boxes and doing what you committed to do when you took refuge, that's your practice, babe. Okay? Yeah. Everybody's different.
I just on the, I will come to the practice. And I know it's maybe a bit of an excuse. You know how they say to become a Buddha takes 1,000 eons. So I say it will happen, not this lifetime, next lifetime. But I do, mate. I just sort of say, but it will happen.
The key thing is, Dave, have you taken? So you've taken refuge, right?
Yes.
Well, then that means you made us. So you took it with me, right? Was it me or someone else?
Okay, no, then honey, several times with you, and then also with His Holiness, I did the video with you and Jason and.
Oh my God! Okay, so darling, you got your lay vows, you've got refuge, you've got your bodhisattva vows, you've got a whole bunch of things, and if you're keeping these, and if you're ticking the boxes and doing what you agreed to do, because basically when you took refuge and then you took this with His Holiness, you shook hands with us and said, "I promise to keep my part of the deal." If you're doing that, honey child, you have a practice. If you're not, then you're pissing on yourself and your teachers. So that's up to you to decide. You get my point here, being blunt?
I do. No, that's why I like you, the bluntness.
So you're doing all right. If you're doing that, honey, you've got to practice. Don't you worry. It's amazing. And you do your Chen raising mantra, and that's incredible. These are all a whole other level of practice. Yep. This is what I'm talking about is a starting point and how you bring this to bear in daily life. And you're doing that. So don't you worry. It's perfect. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, sweetheart. Bye. What else? Something else, people?
Yes, Leah has a question.
Good, Leah. Talk to me, sweetheart.
Hi. Venerable Robina,
Yes.
Hi, with regard to Lama Zopa's rebirth, do we have to wait after his consciousness is left, when his consciousness left the body, do we then have to wait for conception to happen so that we have to, it's at least 9 months before a rebirth takes place? Or, this is going to sound kooky, but there's no way the consciousness can already enter into a child that's already a fetus. Like, we have to wait for conception.
I see. No, okay. So with a person like him, who's advanced, who's in charge of what's going on, he's completely in charge of it. He can control his rebirth, control his death, do the works. Person who's advanced has got realizations. There's only 2 options right now. His mind is either in a very subtle state, in what they call a pure land, and he's he's with the Buddhas, blissing out, or he's entered a womb, and that's it.
Oh, so we don't have to wait for the conception.
I don't get the point about don't have to wait. I don't get that point. There's something
that's just impatience. And I was thinking,
he's around his mind. I mean, all minds are existing all the time, and they're always going to be somewhere or other. In his case, there's either a pure land or in a womb, or in 20 wombs. I mean, listen, honey. I mean, we're not going to. They're not going to recognize 20, but listen to me. The lowest level bodhisattva, and there are 10 stages of the stages of bodhisattvas as you get progressing towards Buddhahood. The lowest level can already manifest their own mind in 100 different bodies simultaneously.
Yeah.
So, honey, we're going to recognize one. That's it. The one that's kind of considered the proper reincarnation. And His Holiness has promised. Dalai Lama's promised he's going to locate him for us and take care of him. He said that. So he's either in a pure land and hasn't chosen to be in a womb yet, or he's already in the womb. That's it. But he's existing all the time. Think of it that way. And if he is a highly realized being, which is what they say he is, then he's totally conscious and he's doing his job no matter what, wherever he is. Do you understand?
Yes. Okay.
Answer the question, Leah.
Yes, it does. So, but is it possible then that there could be a couple?
Oh, as I said, the lowest level bodhisattva, and Rinpoche, who knows what level he's at, can already manifest their mind in 100 different bodies simultaneously. So hear that point.
Okay, all right.
They won't recognize more than one. Normally they recognize one.
Okay.
The reincarnation of Lama Zopa, yeah. But they're bopping around manifesting as dogs and ants and God knows what, these dudes,
Okay. And are we at a place? Thank you. Are we at a place where ordinarily the gender's male? Are we at a place where it's now considered that it might?
I think so. There are female manifestations, of course there are. I mean, look at that Khandrolo, this female holy being. She's also one of Lama Zopa's teachers. And in 2019, when I was at Kopan, Rinpoche laughed and said, "I've got my first lady Lama." So, I mean, according to these bodhisattvas will appear according to the world's mind, so clearly in the Western world, where there's more, where it's a little bit less patriarchal, perhaps, I mean, we've all been boys and girls countless lives. The bodhisattvas are going to take whatever rebirth is suitable, including as females or males, or as, for sure. Of course, darling. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, who else? What else? Please, people. We have 30 minutes to go. We can fit in a lot in 30 minutes.
Venerable Robina, I've got a question.
Good.
So in our lives, we're working on all kinds of different projects in all sorts of different ways, trying to take them through to completion. And we meet obstacles. And
you mean just ordinary life projects, like what? Like, what do you mean?
Building a kitchen, getting a kitchen renovation or something like that.
Okay, go on.
And so my question is about what to do. There's 2 parts to it. What to do when the obstacles keep coming up, and because it can be kind of disheartening and that sort of thing as you're going along, and you're sort of not sure what action to take. And the other side is then all of a sudden things can just start. This momentum happens, and the momentum almost is like a rush and feels a little bit like too much. So it's how to think in these.
Jason, I don't understand your question. It's so complicated. Jason, what's the question? I don't understand. You're getting really complicated. The first part was fine. The second part, you lost me, babe. What's your question?
firstly, how to maintain enthusiasm when obstacles arise, and secondly, when the obstacles are gone, how to embrace the change.
Okay, well, the answer is to that question is rooted. The answer to that question is rooted in understanding that we have attachment and aversion. So attachment is Buddha's teachings, as we know, effectively the Four Noble Truths says attachment is our main problem, the main cause of all suffering, which is hilarious in the West because we don't even know what it is. So then when we understand this primordial attachment is this emotional hunger to always get what I want. This is the most fundamental answer. This is the answer to all our problems. When we realize that attachment is this emotional hunger, this junkie in us that is like a fragile child that only can cope with everything being nice. So the answer to the first question for Jason, when the plumber doesn't turn up or he sends the bill or it's gone wrong, his attachment is having a mental breakdown because it's not bloody getting what it bloody wants. It's as simple as that. And then when it doesn't get what it wants, the attachment immediately gives rise to what's called aversion. That can be anger, depending on his personality, or annoyance, irritation, upset, frustrated, irritated, anxious, worried. That's all variations of thwarted attachment. So that's what arises when things go wrong. So when you know that this is the cause of the problem and you want your bloody kitchen or your toilet, whatever it is, you know it's worthwhile to have it, you just keep persevering through the attachment and through the anger. So now when attachment does get what it wants, and then the hubris sets in, oh, aren't I lucky? Everything's so wonderful. The universe is so kind to me. Wow, wow, wow. Everything's going beautifully. I always get a car park when I need it. Everything works well, blah, blah, blah. Just shut up and calm down and calm your attachment down and tell it to be quiet and relax. And know that things are impermanent. Does that answer the question, Jason?
Yeah, and
you don't look happy.
Well, because I'm thinking about that space when the mind gets clouded. It feels
Jason,
like clarity.
I don't understand your mind. When you talk like this, I get confused. What are you talking about? Clouded. It's attachment and aversion, Jason. Can you give it the right labels, please? Are you some kind of Buddhist or a Nyingmapa, or are you a Gelugpa, or are you what are you, a hippie? Use Buddhist words, please. What do you mean the mind gets cloudy? I hear you, darling. What do you mean?
It's like my mind jams up. And
that's called being stubborn and proud. That's called pride.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to label the delusions. Jason, it's almost too simple. You got delusions in your mind and you have virtues. There is no other option, baby. So if you're feeling light and clear and loving and empathetic, that's because virtue is running the show. If you're putting up with a problem and not upset, that's because virtue is running the show. And if you're cloudy and stuck and blocked and whatever you want to call it, that's because delusions are running the show. And you need to identify the name of the delusion that's causing the problems. Mm-hmm. So attachment is there. It only wants what it wants. And then you get anxiety because you're not, you don't shout and kill and beat up Amy every day and your mum, do you? You're not like that. Okay? You just keep it all. But you get anxious.
Yeah.
You get anxious, right? Anxiety. Would you agree with that? Worried,
yes,
anxious.
definitely.
That's called aversion, Jason. That's another way aversion manifests. Worried about everything's not going the way your attachment wants. And then you say cloudy. I don't know. That's because, that's just how you call it. I don't know. I don't talk about cloudy. I don't know about cloudy. But it's attachment and aversion. So just try and get in touch with that. Label it that. Attachment always wants the lovely things. When you get it, you get excited. And that's good, but you got to catch it. Do you hear or not? I don't know. And what was that other word you said? Blocked? What did you say?
Yeah, blocked. Like the mind seizes up, it feels like.
What?
It's like the mind seizes up and can't think of it's like a deer in the headlights kind of.
Well, that's ego grasping, having a panic attack. That's called fear. The eyes being attacked.
Yeah.
Is that just when things go wrong that you feel that? What happens when the red light comes, when Amy doesn't do what you want, when your mum, when does it come, this blocked feeling? Deer in the headlights, fear. What do you mean? Give an example.
When you're trying to make a decision.
Yeah, so it is about
trying to make a
decision. So a real example, so I'm a classroom teacher, and so sometimes in the classroom there's conflict and confrontation, and it's I have to make decisions about what to do in that.
So you mean a bunch of kids are shouting and yelling and you have to decide how to handle it?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So then tell me what happens.
So if I'm trying to avoid conflict, which I
with the kids.
Yeah, with the kids. With the kids. And it's like when
there could be conflict. You mean they shout back at you?
Yeah, there could be something like that. And it's in the moment, what I've learned is when I just think, don't worry about the conflict, take the action, then it's clear and straightforward. But it's,
okay, so not wanting the conflict is what you're talking about.
Yes.
That's attachment to reputation. You're terrified people won't like you.
Yep.
That's what that is. That's what prevents you from being clear and making a decision. You're afraid of upsetting the apple cart.
Yep.
That's so different people have different approach. So you're kind of like a nice guy or something, whatever, you know, and you mightn't shout and yell, but we've all got this primordial attachment since we're born that is all the time watching on the outside for the feedback. And then we adjust our behavior according to the feedback, and all the feedback we want is only Jason's a nice guy. So you're terrified of upsetting the apple cart. You're terrified of conflict, but you're terrified that people mightn't like you. And that's what prevents us from being authentic, from making the right decisions. And it's primordially deep.
Mm.
Does that answer the question or not?
It gives me something to work with. Yes.
Something to look at.
Yeah.
It's it's the deepest, most subtle attachment of all, and the hardest to recognize. It's the closest to ego grasping that you can get. And it all sounds funny. When I first heard about it, I thought they're just stupid. I don't care what people think. It's total bullshit. We all do. I mean, our very view of who we think we are is like of a half a person. And we rely upon outside feedback second by second to reassure us we made the right decision. And so we're always waiting for that feedback. And then like a person smiles at us, we're, oh, phew, I must have done the right thing. And people don't smile. We have a panic attack. Oh my God, they don't like me. I did the wrong thing. And we get, it's like, that's how we all are, second by second, Jason. So with masses of practice, we have to look at this one. Does that make sense? I think it's that one. That's what you're talking about. I'd say so.
Thank you.
Do the children in general respect you?
Yes.
So when do you shout at them? Do that now with firmness. Do you do that, or you just lose control?
Firmness, not volume, but firmness and clarity.
And they do it. And they accept it.
Yes, often.
Okay, well, that shows you're doing okay. So that's all right. But it's fear. I think it really is that one. I think it's fear of what people think of us. It's so primordial. It's so subtle, Jason. I always use the example, but they always say the Tibetan yogis up in the mountains have given up everything, attachment to everything, except they're still thinking of what the people in the village are thinking about them. Even that's kind of grosser. This one is second by second,
Mm.
So that means we have to as we grow spiritually, as we grow in this way, we become more and more authentic, because we're more and more in touch with what is right and what is wrong, and we will have the courage to act according to that. Then nothing can deter us.
Thank you.
That's really what Lama Zopa talks about, having the right motivation,
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mary said something. What did you say, Mary? There was a note there from Mary. What does Mary say in the chat?
Mary's saying she's got a brother who's a programmer, and they've been talking about AI. And recently he told her that Google is experimenting with storing data on atoms. He tells me he believes they're making headway. If this happens, AI will probably develop full consciousness. And Mary says, I thought about the King of Prayers, on every atom is a Buddha field. Under these circumstances, do you think from a Buddhist perspective that conscience could enter AI?
I understand. So if that's a good question, Mary. Okay, first of all, if we think about it, first of all, if we take let's step back a bit. The Vajrayana model of the universe is that there's matter, and matter is made of the four elements. This is the view they have. We used to think this way once in our culture, but now it's still the way they have in the Buddhist, in the Vajrayana analysis of the universe. Matter is made of the four elements, and then there are minds. So now, according to the Vajrayana, all minds are inextricably linked with their own set of the four elements. It's just the way it is. So you've got gross consciousness inextricably linked with the gross body. Then you've got subtle consciousness, which is our mental states, inextricably linked with the subtler physical energies. And then you have very subtle consciousness, the subtlest level, the clear light consciousness, inextricably linked with the subtlest level of the wind energy. This is just the way it is. So then there's the external elements. There's the internal elements and the external elements. So then that's the one point. Now, second, bodhisattvas have, like I said before, have the clear choice, not to mention Buddhas, to conjoin their minds with anything at all. Like we hear in the sutras, the Buddha has the power to conjoin their mind with and turn into a bridge. Bridge is made of the four elements. A Buddha's mind can manifest as a bridge, can manifest as a dog, can manifest wherever there are the four elements. So you could argue logically, a person's mind, a Buddha's mind, a bodhisattva's mind could conjoin atoms, could conjoin the four elements wherever they might be. But the West people think they create the consciousness. That's a joke. That's the joke. That's the big mistake the Westerners think. They think they're creating consciousness. No, all we do is provide the physical environment, whether it's the egg and the sperm, or whether it's four elements of a tree, and those elements can be the conducive environment for a mind to go there. So that's the way to answer that, Mary. The Westerners think they create the consciousness. That's absurd. You can't create a consciousness. So I hope that helps, Mary, does it? Did it answer your point, do you think, Mary? Sweetheart? Mary will answer at some point.
Mary
yeah,
said,
there you go. Well done. There you go, Mary. That's great. So that's the key point, because I think the key thing is you can't create a consciousness. And that's the point that Westerners do not believe. They think they do. And that's the big problem. But it seems to me a Buddha can do anything. And I mean, Mary, as to whether an ordinary sentient being, an ordinary mind can conjoin, I mean, you know, atoms and things. I mean, when you think about it, you know, an ordinary person has no choice to do that, because you've got the four elements. You've got the wind, you've got the subtle, you've got the 72,000 subtle channels, you've got the chakras. I mean, that's what a being, even animals have that. Now, spirits and gods don't have those, and hell beings don't have that. It's the physical beings that have that. Now, whether an ordinary mind can conjoin with metal and other stuff like a robot, I'm not sure about that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Buddhas and bodhisattvas could, if it were beneficial to sentient beings, you know. I think that's like that, Mary. That's my thoughts on it. It's an interesting point, isn't it? Mm-hmm. People, what else? Good points. 15. Let's do the meditation, okay? Let's do a simple meditation technique. This is, you know, like a good starting point to begin to become familiar with our minds, okay? So just get yourself organized, get your body comfy. So the ideal scenario that all the great yogis and yoginis have found over the centuries that make it most conducive to be able to meditate, most conducive to good meditation, is to be, first of all, there are about 8 points. First, to be sitting in what they call the full lotus position. So most of us maybe can't do that. And that's only because the great yogis and yoginis can stay in meditation for hours and days, and it's very stable. They don't topple over because all the subtle energies are nicely configured. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama says it's really auspicious to start your session, even for a second, in full lotus if you can. It's sort of auspicious for the future ability to be able to do that in the advanced practices. If you can't, don't worry. If you can sit in the half lotus, great. If not that, in regular cross-legged, if not that, in a chair, whatever you can do, okay? So let's assume we're all mostly in a chair. Now, in a chair, it's important not to slump into the back of the chair. Sit upright, okay? Because when you're sitting cross-legged, you have to sit upright, otherwise you'll topple over. So here they're saying you've got to sit upright, it's important. And have your feet firmly on the ground, okay? So then, check your muscles. And they don't talk about this in the text, but it's important. They say sit upright, and okay, I've talked about your bottom, if you did sit cross-legged. And then you've got your second point is your back upright, and your shoulders square. So what happens if we do that? We tense our muscles. This is my way of putting it. So keep your body upright, your shoulders square, and your muscles and your body upright, your skeleton, but flop the muscles, relax the muscles, especially your abdomen. Or squeeze our abdomen, relax the abdomen, relax the muscle. They don't say this in the texts, but keep your body upright. So upright, but relaxed. Third one is your hands. The typical mudra or gesture. There are many, but you can do this one. A good start. Left underneath, right on top like this, thumbs touching, resting in your lap. Right on top, thumbs touching, left underneath, resting in your lap. Your arms not tight against your side, but kind of loose if you can. That's the legs, your bottom, your shoulders, and your hands. So now the head, many points about the head. First of all, have your head slightly tilted forward, chin tucked in. If you have your head thrust back, it makes the mind agitated. Slightly tilted forward, okay. Second is your jaw relaxed. Lips slightly apart. Tip of the tongue just resting behind the top teeth near the palate. And the reason for this is all very practical, is because the yogis have found that you don't have to dribble if you're meditating for a long time. You don't dribble or have to swallow your spit all the time. So tip of the tongue behind the top teeth, resting on the palate there. Lips slightly apart. Jaw relaxed, slightly tilted forward, and your eyes, again, the yogis who really are the serious meditators, who meditate day and night, when they're meditating in the day and there's light there, they have their eyes open because the light comes in and it keeps their mind very clear and sharp. But most of us would get distracted. So have your eyes maybe lightly closed, but your eyes should be looking down, as if you're looking along your nose towards the ground. Okay, so settle now into this position. Your legs, feet, back, shoulders, abdomen, hands. There's more than 8. I added a few more. Jaw, tongue, eyes. And then forget about the body, because your body doesn't meditate. Your mind does. Okay, so now next step, let's locate the sensation of the air going in and out of your nose, which will become our focal point. So just locate it. Take a couple of breaths and just notice and locate the sensation, because that's what we're going to focus on. So take a couple of breaths, very relaxed, and just locate that sensation. So you notice it's slightly different going in and out, isn't it? Just notice it. That's general area of focus, okay? So now what we're going to do, we're going to decide. Right now, we're going to decide, I'm going to pay attention to that breath. Just say it to yourself. I'm going to pay attention. Like, you know yourself, when you make a firm decision, it's likely that's when you're going to do it. You know, if you go, oh, I can't watch my breath, well, you won't bother, I promise. Oh, I can't drive, well, you won't drive, I promise. I will watch my breath. I'm going to pay attention to that sensation. That's the job to be done. That's the technical thing you're trying to do, okay? So now one added piece. What's going to happen naturally is the thoughts are going to be there all the time. It's just what they've been doing, uncontrolled. Well, for countless lives, actually. So they're going to be there, whether you like it or not. So the job is to do your best to keep your attention on the breath. In the beginning, it feels kind of cloudy, like you feel all you do is hear the thoughts, but just keep your focus on that breath. So there's another, so just think another part of your mind kind of watching. It's called mindfulness. It's like watching. Think of it like that. And the mind's going to wander off. So you grab it and you simply bring your attention back to the breath. Your attention wanders off again, and mindfulness brings it back to watch the breath. That's the job to be done. That's it. That's it. That's it. Allow the thoughts to be there. Allow them to come. Allow them to go. Don't have an argument. Don't wish they'd go away. Don't talk to them. Don't sink into them. You know, just stay focused on the breath. That's your job. Do your best to do that. Pay attention to the breath. Let's do about 4 or 5 quality minutes with determination. Pay attention to the breath. Breathing naturally, not forced. And to stay alert, just the breath. Don't worry about all the chatter. Just stay on the breath. That's the job. Just the breath. Stay sharp on the breath. Adjust. You know, if you're spacing out, just adjust it back to the breath. So relax now. It's about 4 minutes, I think. That's good quality 4 minutes, okay? Just relax. So you get the idea. This is a training. It's like you go to the gym. You're training your mind to stay where you want it to stay. Basically, that's it. You're training it. That's all, because it wants to go everywhere, doesn't it? It wants to chat, you know. You're training your mind. And so that will naturally help you. And even if you don't get much concentration, don't worry. But you're going to develop, because you're developing this habit, then you bring this to bear in your daily life. Because you're stepping back a bit, you know. You're just watching the breath. You can't help but hear the thoughts. The same in your daily life. You're doing the dishes, but you can't help hearing your thoughts. Then you grab your thoughts and argue before the words vomit out the mouth, and you abuse your husband, you know. This is the real skill. Become familiar with your mind more and more at an ever sophisticated level, you know. Of course, as you progress with your concentration meditation, so you develop more and more concentration at a subtle level, so you develop a more subtle way of, a more subtle ability to work on your mind, ever more subtle, until eventually, of course, you realize emptiness, you know. When you unpack and unravel all the nonsense. So that's it, people. All right. So I think one more point for Jason, and also one more point, the same for Lynn, and the same anybody. The key thing, whatever you do, like say, especially with Jason, when you're working with parents and with your kids, and Lynn working with a mum, whatever you do, and Lynn could also be firm with her mum. She could be very firm, but it's got to come from genuine. With you, Jason, it's got to come from kindness to the kids. You've got to want to be beneficial to them. Then I think they know it. They will know, even you scream, if they know you care. It's got to come from a kindness, not just from authoritative, not just from anger, not just to make you what you want, When you trust that part of yourself, then you'll have more courage and you'll be less cloudy. Do you understand, Jason?
Yeah, clear. And they do, you're right, that's what they reflect back when you're coming, because they can sense this authenticity very clearly.
If you have that, if you do have that, if you genuinely care, and you're more, and you are authentic and not fearful, that takes time. You have to practice that. That's all. Okay, darling people, that'll do for today. I think we're not food for thought. Everybody, thank you so much. Let's just make a quick. Let's just do one verse of the prayer. Let's just do one verse of Lama Zopa's swift return. That one. Let's do that prayer of Kundala. One of the verses in Kundala's prayer, please. Can we do that?
Kundala's.
Yes.
I have to find it, just a moment.
Just one of those verses there. We'll just find it. Yeah.
I'll just find that one.
Yeah, good. So even if you know Lama Zopa or not, just have the thought of maybe a holy being. It'd be nice to have come back again in a human body to keep teaching us. And if you do know Rinpoche, then want it from your heart, Because the main cause, you see, there's the thing, Rinpoche is a high being. He can do what he likes. But we forget that the main cause of what he does is us. So it's sort of like if you're a doctor and you put your little name out on your door, but no one comes, of course you won't stay around. You go where you're needed. So they go where they're needed. So if we need and we want and we request and we ask and we practice, guaranteed he will come. Have you found it?
Just finding. Oh, where did it go?
So I had a question about that, Venerable Robina. I think you sort of answered it for me, but I was wondering, how long do we do these prayers for? But it sounds like until it's announced.
Oh, as he comes, honey child.
Yeah.
Or until we hear other news, as of course you must. You must, of course you must. It's logical. If you really want to come back, you don't just stop wanting him. Like, your hubby's gone away and you want him to come back every day after 1 month. Oh, that's the end of that. Goodbye. He's not coming. Come on,
Yeah.
don't care much.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just let's find one of the verses. Go towards the end. Go towards the end. Let's do one of the verses from our heart. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, so through the force of the truth of unchanging suchness, may the unmistaken incarnation return quickly. This lament was made by me, a Dakini, with pure faith in Samaya, her eyes filled with tears of sorrow. May these wishes of a beggar woman be fulfilled through the blessings of the deities of the three roots. The three roots is an Nyingma, I think it's the Guru, the Yidam, and the Protector. Perception, its object, and the act of perceiving all dissolve within the expanse, the blissful clarity of suchness. So from our hearts, if we have a connection with Rinpoche, please request, please come back quickly in a human form. And as I said before, it's encouraging that His Holiness has told us several times that he promises he will take responsibility to find the incarnation and even to look after him. And he said at one point, you can sort of see him up to about here, he said, because His Holiness has promised to live till at least 120, but he said recently in a meeting in Dharamsala to all the fpmt students who came to the long life puja that Lama Zopa had offered before he passed away, he said that he promises that Palden Lamo, this wrathful female protector Buddha, appeared to him in a dream and told him he's going to live for another 20 to 30 years. And he's 86 now, so he's going to be 116. So we should hang on to his coattails. We maybe live as long as His Holiness. So may all the holy beings live long, and may Lama Zopa come back quickly, and may we live long, so we can be of use to this planet, okay, and ourselves. Changchub Semchog Rinpoche, Make Panam, Keguchi, Kepanyampa, Mepa Yang, Gongne, Gondru, Felba Shog. And may never give up, people, never give up on yourself and others. Never give up. Pick yourself up, Lynn, no matter how mean you've been to your mum. Pick yourself up and just keep moving, okay? And Jason, pick yourself up and just keep moving. All of us, pick ourselves up and just keep moving. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, David. I received your scarf, David. Thank you, David, darling.
Thanks,
Thanks, sweethearts. Bye.